My name is Thomas, and a few weeks ago I made a video about the TT Artisan 75mm f1.5 lens. You know, the one that is modeled a little bit after the 1938 Zeiss Biotar lens. And guess what? Thanks to a supporter of my channel and someone who visited my video, I got this. This is the original, the Zeiss Biotar, and I was able to shoot it together with the TT Artisan. What's more, I also got the 85mm f1.5 Helios 40, a lens from the Soviet Union era that is still made in Russia, or at least it was made a couple of years ago. I was able to shoot all the three of them, so it's gonna be a lot of fun. Let's have a go. I'm super thrilled again. Hey guys, here's future Tom, and yeah, sadly there was an issue with Canon EOS 500 camera. It doesn't help that you've got an almost unused camera, original packaging. So I only got 6 pictures out of the whole roll of film. I don't know what went wrong, but these 6 pictures turned out very well. And I owned the Helios 40 lens several years ago on a digital camera, but back then on APS-C, and I really always liked the results. So the Helios lens is not directly compared in this video with the other 2 lenses, but I still show you a few sample pictures and talk about all the quirks and features of the lens. So enjoy! I showed you all the details of the TT Artisan 75mm lens. I really love that lens. Fantastic lens. I have a lot of fun shooting it. And 1.5, beautiful 13 aperture blades, awesome optics. I really love this lens. And the original, as you can see, this is the Zeiss Biotar. This is the 3rd version of the Zeiss Biotar. They made 2 more versions before this one that had a somewhat slimmer barrel. I'm going to show you a picture. It looks very much like the TT Artisan again, because TT Artisan, they really wanted to pay homage to the Zeiss, and I think they did a great job. Nonetheless, there are small differences. The Soviet lens, the Helios, is also a similar optical formula. So the Soviet people back then, I think in 1957 this came out in the first version, they also are using a Biotar formula, so it gives also very similar sort of characteristics. That Swirly Bokeh sharpens up nicely when you stop down, stuff like that. But that one is an 85mm lens, and amazingly, this particular lens that I got here, you notice it's got a Canon EOS mount. That's why it's mounted on an EOS analog camera. This lens was made in 2014, so it seems they never really got out of production. They just continue making those lenses. Like, they make vintage lenses before it was cool, so to say. This lens was provided to me by Pergear, which is a big online store for a lot of camera stuff, nice lenses, accessories, and so on. Just check it out. I put a link in the description below. The first thing you notice when looking at the Zeiss Biotar, this seems to be made from machined aluminum. Sorry, it's an M42 mount. It also has this sort of tapered design here, which is only in the 3rd version of the lens. This one was made in the early 1950s, so it's a original sort of match to this Zeiss Econ Contax S Type D camera, which is a 1951. One word of caution, this lens actually doesn't fit any M42 camera, because this is such an old M42 lens that you see here at the rear, there is some part protruding behind the M42 threads, and it will hit pieces inside the mirror chamber in most M42 cameras that were produced after 1956. So this lens most likely won't work on a Pentax Spotmatic, for example, because that camera is too new. If you're shooting this on modern digital cameras, it shouldn't be a problem, because then you have adapters between the lens and the camera anyway. But on real M42 analog cameras, you really have to get a very old one to use this lens. Beware. The biggest difference, I would say, in use to the TT Artisan is that this has the beautiful pre-select aperture. The way it works is you have a second ring here that you can sort of, push down and then move. And this ring, you move to the desired aperture, let's say 5.6, comme ça, and then it snaps in. And then all you do is you go to open aperture for precise focusing, to see clearly in your focusing screen in the camera where your point of focus is. And then before you shoot, you just do this. Open, close to the pre-selected value. This is such a super simple feature. It was made in the days before they had automatic apertures inside the camera, and it's so useful. I really wish that they would do that again today, but I had said it many times. The TT Artisan lacks that feature. In practice, it means you always go to open. It's open, and you stop down to 5.6 in this case. It's just, you don't have to think. You don't have to think about, oh, I'm not gonna stop down to the correct value or something. It just works super easily. I really love it. The Helios has a similar feature, also pre-select aperture, but it works very differently. So this huge ring is the stop down ring. This little ring back here, that's the actual focus ring. You really have to get used to that. And here in the front, there is your aperture ring. This aperture ring has click stops, in contrast to the one on the contacts, on the Zeiss lens. Let's set it to 5.6. And now what you do is you turn this huge ring to here. So it works in a very similar way. Still, it works in practice. It's a little bit different. For some reason, I really have to get used to this version, whereas the Zeiss version seems more intuitive to me. But I think it's just a matter of how often you're using this lens and this feature. You also get used to the version of the Helios lens. Again, it's a super practical feature. I wish they would still do it today in the manual focus lenses. So the Helios lens, again, it came out in 1957, I think. This is a very late version. It's got an all-metal black barrel. The first ones were also aluminium, I think, so they look silvery like the Zeiss lens. And this one's got EOS mount. Of course, it's a dump lens. It doesn't have any electric contacts, but yeah, they made it not only with M42 mount, but also with Canon EOS, for example. Maybe also Nikon, I don't know. I think there also was a Nikon mount. That's why I had to shoot it on an EOS camera body. I only have this EOS 500. I do not recommend using such a simple body if I were you. Not because this is a bad camera, but these more entry-level cameras, they're not designed for manual focusing. If you want to shoot this on an EOS body, I would recommend something more high-end, maybe an EOS 1 even with interchangeable focusing screen. Get a split image for it or something. Or you shoot it digitally. Of course, this also can be used on any mirrorless camera. There are EOS 2 mirrorless adapters like Sony or Nikon or whatever, Nikon Z, what you're shooting. And you can get a very easy one, a very cheap one without electronic contacts, because again, the lens is dumb anyway. Doesn't need a sophisticated electronic adapter. Overall, I would try to get the M42 version if you're lucky to find one, but yeah, this lens is EOS, as I said, and yeah, it also works, sure. There is a big difference in these three lenses, and that is size and weight. And in size, I mean, oh, you see it? The Helios is much larger. It's an 85, and also it's a Soviet era lens, should tell you everything. They always tend to make things pretty heavy and large, but this lens weighs about 900 grams. The TT Artisan is about 600 grams, and it's also pretty heavy lens. But this is the big boy here. I don't think it's only because of the 10mm difference. I also think it's about the way how they are made. The original one, this one is more like 500 grams. It's a little bit more lightweight. I have to say I prefer it because it's a little bit more lightweight. You do notice it somehow. Of course, if you shoot the Helios on such a cheap camera like this, the camera doesn't weigh a thing, which is sort of nice. But if you have it on a better camera body, the Helios is really the most heavy, and you do notice that. So first we're doing a sort of landscape shot. Nice tree over there, and I shoot it with all the 3 lenses and all sorts of apertures from 1.5 through 8. Let's have a go. Overall, both are super similar, but the Zeiss does a bit better here than the TT Artisan, especially on the left side. I guess my copy of the TT Artisan's not perfectly centered. In real-world shooting, I never noticed, cause around f5.6 or f8 both are fine, sharp at all 4 sides, and you never will shoot landscapes at open aperture with this type of lens. I'm trying to take some shots of these emerging leaves. It's still spring. We don't have a lot of flowers yet, but I'm doing my best. And again, I'm trying at open aperture f1.5 and then f2.8 to show you the difference in bokeh, which is pretty obvious. They all do awesome bokeh at 1.5, really swirly stuff. And you also see that at f2.8 they already look much more tamed, much more neutral. Okay, now I'm trying to find a motive and counterlight this little plant there, and the sun is shining from kind of behind the plant, more or less into the lens, and I'm not using any lens hood, so I want to see how these lenses react, of course. So let's go for it. What really strikes me is how nice it is really to use a lens with this pre-select aperture. Please, TT Artisan, 7 Artisans, put this feature into your next manual focus lenses again. I already made a video about how nice it is and why, but now that I'm actually using a lens with pre-select aperture, I realize what a breeze to use. You focus at open aperture and then you just turn it to the hot stop that you pre-select yourself, and you know you're at precisely the aperture you want to shoot. It's in the fraction of a second. It goes so quick, and it works with every sort of camera. You know, it works with adapted lenses on modern cameras, etc. Pre-select aperture is really, really, really cool. Very easy to use, super convenient, and absolutely universal for every sort of camera that you're shooting your lens with. Please bring it back again. We are in Wanneheide, in the south of Cologne. It's a beautiful nature conservation area, and it's very close to the airport actually, but unless there's an airplane flying, you don't notice. And I shoot this on between f5.6 and f8, and you see at those sort of apertures, they're all really, really sharp and crisp. Also in the corners of the frame, very, very similar, very good performance. So that shows that these classic lenses do have a lot of qualities on top of just providing soap bubble swirly bokeh. I've still got some shots left here on the Canon EOS 500 with the Helios 40 lens on it, and so I'm gonna shoot those as well. And I have to say, this is also a fantastic lens. It's kind of every bit as good as the other two, I would say. They all have different character traits in detail, but overall, they're all three just awesome. Now you've seen all the images, what do you think? When stepping down, they all three actually become pretty sharp, even towards the corners of your frame, which is very nice. And it shows that all these lenses are made for much more than just swirly bokeh. I'm not sure if you saw the review on Analog Insight about the TT Artisan 75, where Max said you get character on demand, which means you just open the aperture to 1.5 in all these three lenses and you get sort of swirly bokeh, nice bokeh, really, really soft background blur. But once you step down to like 2.8, they all three become much more neutral and more modern, so to say. So you always get the choice. You're not pressed to shoot swirly bokeh stuff when you don't want to. You can always select an aperture where these lenses behave much more modern and more tamed. And that's really, really nice. I love that. Yeah, again, differences are very small, and it also depends on the circumstances and what you're shooting. I find that colorful motifs are really cool for all these lenses. In black and white, they may be a little bit, well, you don't see so much of the character, but try out. I mean, these are all made also to try out and enjoy and to experiment a bit. Next thing are the apertures of these lenses. Again, we see a lot of differences, and to show you those, I took this little model plane. It's about 25 centimeters wide, I would say. It's not really large. And I set up a shot for all three lenses in the dark with some bright highlights in the background. The distance was about 1 meter, so it's pretty close. That means that the bokeh balls in the background are pretty large. If you're shooting at wider distances, of course, they will just become a bit smaller, but they will have the same shape. And that's what we want to see. I shot those on a digital camera with APS-C sensor, so it's also cropped in a bit. Again, you see the bokeh balls larger maybe than on a full frame camera. And you do see the differences. The Zeiss lens, for example, it comes with straight aperture blades, 10 of them, and you see that when you step down a little bit to 2 or 2.8, then you also see that straight shaped background bokeh balls. And the TT Artisan, on the other hand, it has a beautiful 13-bladed aperture with rounded blades, and you do really see the difference when you step down a little bit. And that's maybe part of why especially the TT Artisan gives a really smooth background and a really smooth image when you're shooting at not open aperture, but maybe more 2 or 2.8. The Helios is a little bit like the Zeiss, but even much more extreme because, again, 10 aperture blades, but they are sort of like saw-tooth shaped. I don't know how to call that. Looks like these circular saws from horror movies. And well, it makes pretty funky bokeh balls. So if you are more experimental, maybe you just love that. So you do see that the shape of the aperture matters a lot. If you do want to shoot night shots at f8 and get beautiful aperture stars, then the Zeiss and the Helios have an advantage. The TT Artisan is not made for that, but I'm not sure if any of you guys want to use these sort of lenses for that sort of night shots at small apertures. Time for the verdict, and yeah, what can I say? This is not a test where I'm gonna tell you 1, 2, or 3 is the best, because it doesn't make sense. Okay, I mean, price-wise, of course, the TT Artisan wins. This is brand new. You can get it currently almost anywhere on the internet or even in photo stores, and it's 300, below 300 euros. What can I say? The Zeiss is a legend. It's a legendary lens. I totally love it, and I get if you want this over the TT Artisan. But these lenses are rare. They made about 20,000 in all variants, and they're all like 70, 80 years old. If you want a really good one, you're gonna pay 1,000 euros or maybe even more. So yeah, hard to compare price alone. I get that maybe a lot of guys who own the Zeiss lens maybe also want to have the TT Artisan just for fun, to add to their collection. I mean, comparing the prices, it's a no-brainer, the TT Artisan, really. This one, I'm not sure if you can still get them today. New. This again is in 2014. I think they make some sort of low volume production runs from time to time. No one really knows what's happening there in Russia, and with the current political situation, they maybe don't do them at all anymore, which is a pity. It's more expensive normally than the TT Artisan. I've seen them for around 400 to 500 euros. Would I select it over the TT Artisan? I don't know. If you want to, then yeah, it's fun because it adds a little bit of a different, a little bit of a different vibe to the whole thing. Also a little bit longer focal length. It could be fun, but overall, I think the other two, especially the TT Artisan, are maybe today the ones that you really want to go for. But if you're lucky and you find one of these Helios lenses, go for it. It's also an absolutely awesome lens. But that they are awesome goes for all 3 of them. Well, I think that's it for today. I hope you found this interesting, maybe even useful. If you did so, then please leave a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so yet. And if you've got any questions or comments, use the comment section below. I love to read all your comments, you know that, and I will happily answer every single one of them. So, live long and prosper, have a great time, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.